Nous sommes prêts à commencer, donc
We are ready to begin. Welcome to everyone. I call this meeting to order.
the House of Commons Standing Committee on Official Languages. La réunion d'aujourd'hui se déroule
Today's meeting will take place on hybrid format as per the House order adopted on Thursday, November 25th, 2021, and members will be present in person or using Zoom.
in light of the recommendations from health authorities to remain healthy and safe. All those attending the meeting in person should follow the directives of the Board of Internal Economy. Je remercie d'avance les membres de leur coopération.
Thank you in advance for your cooperation. For those of you who are participating virtually, here are some few rules to follow. First, you can express yourself in the official language of your choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of the screen to listen to the floor or English or French. If interpretation services are interrupted, please let me know as soon as possible, and we will make sure that we can restore the service before continuing with our work. Before taking the floor, please wait for me to recognize you by name, and then you can turn on your microphone and speak. For those of you who are in the room, your microphone will be controlled by our Procedures and Verification Officer. We remind you that, like I don't do, please speak clearly and slowly. When you're not speaking, please turn off your mic.
Challenges arise, please advise me immediately. Please know that we may need to suspend a few minutes as we need to ensure all members are able to participate fully. Donc,
pursuant to Standing Order 1083F and motions adopted by the committee on Wednesday, December 15th, 2021, and Monday, January 31st, 2022, the committee is undertaking a study on the importance of official languages at Air Canada. I would like now to welcome our witnesses. Via video conference from Air Canada, Mr. Michael Rousseau, President and Chief Executive Officer. Marc Barbeau, Executive Vice President and Chief Legal Officer. David Rowe, Vice President, Government and Community Relations. Mr. Rousseau, you have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. From there, we'll move on to a series of questions. I will signal to you when you have about 1 minute left. I will now give you the floor, Mr. Rousseau. We are ready to hear you for the next 5 minutes.
Members of the committee, to appear before you today in the work of the Standing Committee on Official Languages. Je vous remercie.
I thank you for inviting me here today.
Marc Barbeau, our Executive Vice President and Chief Legal Officer, and David Rowe, our Vice President, Government and Community Relations. I would have liked to deliver more of my opening remarks in both official languages, but my ability to speak French is not yet equal to the effort I've been investing into learning it. On November 3rd, during a scrum before the Chamber of Commerce of Montreal, I regret having made a statement which was insensitive to the status of French. I've apologized for my comments, and I've been taking French lessons ever since. Je suis désolé.
I am sorry. I apologize again. And I take responsibility for my words. I regret the impact that this has had on our employees. They serve our clients every day in both official languages.
To Canadians and to Quebecers in particular, that I am sincere in my commitment to advance Air Canada's official language efforts. I've also reinforced this commitment to our employees and to the management team. Air Canada
has a special bond with Canadians, and we understand our responsibility to being bilingual and to provide services and to communicate with our customers in both languages.
embraces the unique expectations of bilingualism and is doing its utmost to ensure we meet them. We have an ambitious language action plan adopted in 2020. We have established our own language learning programs to help our employees improve their language skills and use French in serving our clients. We've always prioritized the hiring of bilingual employees. In fact, almost half of our employees who serve our customers are bilingual.
At Air Canada, serving our customers in both official languages is a priority.
Corporate priorities. Over the decade leading up to the pandemic, we have made strides in improving our track record on official languages. Our linguistic services team maintains regular communications with the Commissioner's office, and we work with them to treat complaints diligently. In addition, in 2020, we filed our 2020 to 2023 action plan and have since put in place a cross-functional management committee to monitor and coordinate the initiatives stemming from that plan. I'm pleased to share with you today that Air Canada is implementing new measures to improve and strengthen its commitment to bilingualism. Thanks to our employees who share their suggestions and perspective, helping us develop these new initiatives. Nous avons annoncé des mesures.
We have announced additional measures to strengthen bilingualism at Air Canada.
As we emerge from the pandemic, we will continue to increase our efforts to consult with employees and to mobilize our teams to improve our approach and initiatives. Again, I hope my mistake, which I've taken full responsibility for, does not take away from the hard work of our dedicated employees who work every day to serve our customers in the language of their choice. I'm very proud to be Air Canada's CEO. I've worked for 14 years with this company's great people. I know the challenges we faced during those years prepared me to lead in what has been a very difficult and uncertain period for the industry. Canada needs a vibrant global airline. We will work tirelessly to rebuild it for all Canadians as we recover from the pandemic. Embracing linguistic duality and bilingualism is a responsibility of ours, a matter of pride and principle, and a sign of respect for Canada and all Canadians.
About 30 seconds, Mr. 30 seconds.
Bilingual service is aligned with our business objectives and is also proudly part of the brand and identity. Mostly due to the complexity of our business, sometimes we do not meet our aspirations. We know we can do better. Je suis déterminé à faire mieux.
I am determined to do better. And I know that I have the support of the entire Air Canada team. I thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Rousseau.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rousseau. The first round of questions will be made by members of each party around the table. Everyone gets 6 minutes. First round of questions will come from the first vice chair. Mr. Godin, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Mr. Rousseau, I would like to thank you and to congratulate you for the efforts that you've made to address us in French. It's laudable, and it's nothing against your ability to learn French. I am immersed every season to learn English, so I fully understand your experience. Please know that it's not against you as a person that I will be asking you questions. It's more as the CEO of Air Canada. You have seen the impact that your words had when you left the conference at the Metropolitan Montreal Chamber of Commerce. It led us to ask some very important questions, and I asked myself some important questions as well. First, Mr. Rousseau, can you tell us, and I'm going to interrupt you probably because we're limited in time, so please know that this isn't to be rude. Don't take it personally, but I have many questions I want to ask you. So if I interrupt you, please don't take it personally. I'm just trying to find direct answers to my questions. So first, you say you want to do better with regards to bilingualism at Air Canada. For the last 45 years, official languages commissioners have demonstrated that Air Canada has a systemic problem with regards to French within the business. You haven't been there for 45 years. I'll allow it. But as CEO, you are trying to do better. You're implementing measures. So here my first question, how many unilingual francophones are on the board of directors at Air Canada?
Mr. Chairman, our board of directors consists of 12 individuals, including myself. Air Canada is a global company, and so we attract board members from around the world and from across Canada. Currently, there are 8.
Monsieur le Président, je m'excuse de vous interrompre. Je voudrais seulement qu'avoir un...
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm looking for a number. How many members of the Board of Administration are unilingual francophones?
Of the board directors, 4 of the board members can speak and understand French.
4 unilingues.
4 unilingual francophones? That's my question. So there are none. So there are 4 francophones on 12. So 8 are anglophones. Mr. Chair, if there's a member of the Board of Directors asks questions or presents a project in French, will you understand?
Our company is a global company, and like other global companies, we attract board members from around the world. And so we have board members from outside Canada and from across Canada. And for the most part, the language used at the board is English.
Vous savez, Monsieur le Président,
You know that you're under the jurisdiction of the Official Languages Act, and I think that it is your responsibility to offer your employees the opportunity to speak in both official languages. So, at the Board of Directors, you'll only work in English. If the president of Air Canada makes statements like you did last November in Montreal, you'll understand that we're concerned. The systemic issue that exists at Air Canada for 45 years, and the current pilot, you'll forgive my pun, doesn't seem preoccupied. So if you, at the Board of Directors, don't speak French, how can you expect this to trickle down at other levels of the company? How can all of Air Canada's operations respect French language if it doesn't come from the top?
Mr. Chairman, so we adhere to all parts of the Official Languages Act in communication with our employees. When we speak to our employees, we speak in both official languages, and they can ask any question in any language they so choose when they speak to management. That has been in place for as long as I know, and that will continue. Additionally, Air Canada has approximately 50% of their employees who are customer-facing that are bilingual.
Monsieur le Président, je m'excuse de vous interrompre.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I only have 1 minute left. I would like to know this. Did you consult with the Minister of Official Languages or members of her team in the writing of Bill C-13?
I did, Mr. Chairman, I did not personally consult with the Commissioner on Bill C-13, but if possible, could I like to delegate the question to David Rowe, who would have been much closer to that situation.
Mais Monsieur le Président, la question...
Mr. Chair, Mr. President, this is a question for you. I'm not talking about the Commissioner. I'm talking about Mrs. Minister Petitpas-Taylor or her staff. Did you or any of your executives speak with her? Did you participate in writing C-13? Because you got involved in C-13 and the connection with the Official Languages Commissioner. I'm so sorry, Mr. Godin. We could take this further maybe later. Next speaker, Francis Drouin. You have 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would also like to congratulate the President for making efforts in learning French. I will never judge anyone for having an accent or not. I think we should celebrate our accents, and God knows that there are many French accents in the Francophonie. Mr. Rousseau, you can answer this or refer it to one of your colleagues who is better placed to respond, but I'm more interested in the service offered by Air Canada. What are the procedures that Air Canada puts in place to make sure that they can serve clients in English and French? And if they can't serve them, what happens internally to make sure that we correct the situation?
Mr. Chairman, I'll take that question, and if needed, I'll refer to David. So at our call centers, the customer would indicate whether they want to be served in French or English, and that would go to a call center employee that can speak that language, speak the respective language. At the airport, if a customer approaches one of our staff and that staff cannot speak French, then they say, "Un moment, s'il vous plaît," and they go find a French-speaking employee. If there's no one around or it can't be done in time, we have a special number for that employee to call so that a bilingual agent can speak to that customer and rectify the issue. In the aircraft, with our flight attendants, we have a very sophisticated manpower planning system that puts a bilingual flight attendant, at least one bilingual flight attendant, on every flight that's required to do so. And again, on the plane, if a customer does speak to a English-only speaking flight attendant, that flight attendant does say, "Un moment, s'il vous plaît," and finds the bilingual flight attendant to respond to that customer in the language of their choice. David, Mr. Chairman, if I can ask David to make any other comments.
En fait, Monsieur Rousseau, je pense.
Well, you know, Mr. Rousseau, I think that you summarized the procedures well. These make sure that we meet our official languages obligations. And then with regards to personal verifications on aircraft, we check this every month to make sure that our system is working. I can tell you that on all Air Canada flights, whether it's a high-demand flight or not, I'd say that 95% of flights had language services available in both languages. What are the other barriers that are faced by staff? Maybe they'll take another flight. I think we've all experienced this where a flight crew is late or a flight that had a dedicated team doesn't have the same team. So how do you make sure that you respect the Official Languages Act and serve your clients in both official languages when that kind of unforeseen event happens? Is that the explanation for the 5% of non-conformity?
Peut-être si je peux rajouter.
If I can maybe add, Monsieur Drouin, it's not that there was non-compliance. We have, as a policy, to have bilingual staff on all flights, whether the need is there or not. With Jazz, for example, which is our regional partner, they have flights with only one flight attendant. Jazz also created a system to ensure that bilingual crew always be available for flights when needed. If there's an issue and flight attendants are not able to make the flight for weather or any other reasons, it can happen that at the last minute we have to use a unilingual flight attendant. We have received complaints about that, but we always verify that it only happens in extraordinary circumstances that could not be foreseen. We're going to move on to the next person, Mario Beaulieu, our second Vice President. Thank you. Monsieur Rousseau, on November 9th, your board of directors stated that you would be starting to learn French, but the Journal de Montréal asked you a question whether or not you spoke French, and your representative stated that you'd been living in Quebec since 2007 and you had a functional level of French that you were continuously improving. Are you aware of that statement? Had you approved that statement? And do you think that giving out false information is a good strategy? I would like to get your comments on that, please.
Mr. Chairman, in response to the question, first of all, giving out false information is never a good strategy, and that would never be our intent. I would have to go back and check with our people as to what was discussed in my absence and before the Chamber of Commerce presentation or after the Chamber of Commerce presentation. So I don't have visibility as to what was indicated to the media at that point in time.
We can send that information to you. It was a year before 2020, and the journalist had asked the question, and that was the answer that the journalist was given. So I see now that you weren't aware of that statement, and you wouldn't approve a strategy that gives out false information. My second question now. As I said earlier, the board of directors stated that you started learning French in November. Can you tell us more about how your lessons are going?
Mr. Chairman, so I have daily lessons with each day, each morning, with two different tutors from a well-recognized firm. And they assign me homework at night, and which I complete for the next day or the next session. And so the routine is every morning, and then homework virtually every night.
When you stated that you had always been able to live in Montreal without speaking French, and that it showed how well things are going in Montreal, but that goes against the rules, the French regulations in French, and there are about 30% of people in Quebec who don't speak French. Do you not think that you reflected how things were and what was stated in the Official Languages Act?
Mr. Chairman, I admit I made a mistake by not learning to speak French when I joined Air Canada. I'm obviously correcting that mistake at this point in time. And I look forward to being able to communicate much better in French with an appropriate accent over the next little while. For me to participate fully in Quebec society, I recognize I must be able to speak French. And that is my challenge, that is my commitment, that is my objective as soon as possible.
Would Air Canada be ready to respect the Law 101 instead of the Official Languages Act?
Mr. Chairman, we currently, as you know, are subject to the Official Languages Act because we are across Canada and frankly across the world. And although we have some challenges and we're continuously trying to improve our performance under the Official Languages Act, it is more appropriate given our scope of operations. But I'd like to defer that more detailed aspect of that question to David Rowe, who has been speaking to the province of Quebec about Bill 101.
Peut-être juste pour rajouter.
Just to add, the Official Languages Act covers Air Canada employees and customers, and so Air Canada works very hard to respect the Official Languages Act. I apologize for interrupting you, Monsieur Réau. I try to interrupt you as politely as possible, but perhaps you can come back to it.
Next question will be asked directly from Manitoba with Mrs. Ashton. 6 minutes, Mrs. Ashton.
Bonjour, merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, and Mr. Chair. I would like to share my concerns, first and foremost, that regarding the fact that the presentation was not fully bilingual and none of his answers have been in French. As a committee, we want to highlight the importance of French in Quebec and throughout Canada. We want to maintain the implementation of the Official Languages Act, and we want to ensure that companies and other sectors, including Air Canada, protect the use of French. And today, I would like to share that we are disappointed with the presentation. And we need to look back to not only what happened in November, but also a few years ago to understand the situation. It is a systemic lack of respect for French that we've seen with Air Canada. Graham Fraser shared a report stating that most complaints received had to do with the language received by the public. The complaints also stated that Air Canada employees have been negative when asked to offer service in French. That was in 2016. And at that point, Monsieur Rousseau had been at Air Canada for about 10 years, and clearly you haven't taken what Mr. Fraser said seriously. And how can we expect Air Canada to respect French when this is what we see?
Mr. Chairman, in response to the question, let me first of all say Air Canada very much respects both official languages and the Official Language Act. We do our best to adhere to all the rules and as we've spoken about before to many commissioners, the complexity of our business and the volume of interactions we have with customers does give rise to the highest number versus other companies, but we're not comparable to other companies. I can commit to you, certainly in my 14 years at Air Canada, there has been continuous improvement in continuous investment in trying to improve our performance. We hire every bilingual flight attendant we can possibly get. We'd like to have more. We hire as many bilingual employees as possible outside the province of Quebec, which is a challenge given the current situation. This bilingualism, this approach to both official languages is part of our brand, part of our equity, and we take it very, very seriously. We promote bilingualism across Canada. We partner with many different organizations to promote French language in all parts of Canada. And certainly it is my commitment that this will continue and it will improve as we continually find better ways of delivering service in both official languages.
J'aimerais dire
You're talking about efforts being made at the organizational level. You apologized for your lack of awareness on the language matter in Quebec. But the question is, what are you doing to better offer language services for those who work at Air Canada? This is a practical question, a substance question. We know that commissioners talked about complaints against you. What is Air Canada doing to improve offering services in French?
Okay, Mr. Chairman. So since the report from Commissioner Fraser, I believe, and David Rowe can provide more details. I believe we've provided over 130,000 training hours to over 10,000 employees to learn how to speak French, and so we have substantial resources within the company to have anyone learn a second language. David, can you provide some other details?
Peut-être si je peux rajouter sur ce que...
If I can add to what Monsieur Rousseau said in response, we have a comprehensive language program at Air Canada. We have offered more than 130,000 hours of language training to our employees. We want to meet the needs of our employees. We also help people maintain their knowledge, so people who are bilingual. And we have sessions so that they can maintain their French, because in certain areas of the country it is difficult for them to maintain their French. Now, we've noticed that with the pandemic, it's more and more difficult to hire bilingual staff throughout the country. So we want to create a course to improve their competencies. Thank you, Monsieur Rio. Apologies. 6 minutes has come and gone. Now, 5 minutes for Monsieur Jacques Gourde. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Monsieur Rousseau, for being here at our committee. You just talked about 130,000 hours for your employees. That's about 13 hours per employee. Do you think that, and you're taking French classes, do you think that 13 hours is enough to learn French for your employees?
Mr. Chairman, again, I'd like to delegate to David on that more detailed question.
C'est une très bonne question. Merci.
No, I asked Monsieur Rousseau. I asked this question to Monsieur Rousseau. He is taking classes right now. He knows how hard it can be for a unilingual Anglophone to learn French. Is 13 hours sufficient to improve the language competencies? Is 13 hours sufficient, or could Air Canada increase that amount of time? Because that seems a little ridiculous. You know that it's hard to learn French. Is 13 hours enough, yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, for an Anglophone to learn French in 13 hours would be very, very difficult. But again, I think the math has to be explained by David Rowe.
Non, excusez, on va passer à d'autres choses.
We're going to move on to something else instead. Monsieur Rousseau. Throughout the pandemic, Air Canada employees were unfortunately laid off. Was Air Canada able to use, or Air Canada used government programs? Did you receive funds from the government to pay employees, and could you have used those funds to help them improve their French?
Mr. Chairman, in response to the question, yes, there's no doubt the most difficult decision we had to make during the pandemic was laying off almost 20,000 of our employees. Now, luckily, and with good fortune, they're almost all back to work, the ones that chose to come back. We did access, as many companies access, the CEWS fund, and we retained roughly 40% of our staff, yet we only flew about 10% of our regular flights from 2019 during the pandemic. The money for French language classes and support it was not part of those funds from the government. We've always funded separately the French language aspects of our business. And as CFO for 12 years, I certainly was always supportive of funding, sufficient funding to meet our goals and objectives on the French language file.
Dernière question pour
Last question, Mr. Rousseau. The Government of Canada has always had close ties with Air Canada, and throughout the pandemic, the Government of Canada was fairly generous with you and with others. This morning, we learned that tickets would be needed, or services would be needed to help refugees, and things are locked in Montreal because nobody is paying for cargo. You received perhaps $1 billion from the Government of Canada. Could you have not taken that and helped the Ukrainian refugees? You have 30 seconds.
Mr. Chairman, we've never relied on government assistance for humanitarian aid. Air Canada has a rich history of providing humanitarian aid all by itself in Haiti, in British Columbia with the fires. And a week and a half ago, we sent a 787 full of cargo to Warsaw for the Ukrainian situation. And we stand ready, and we've spoken to several ministers.
Merci, Monsieur Rousseau.
Regarding helping.
Thank you, Monsieur Rousseau. You'll be able to say more later if it comes back. 5 minutes, Ms. Latanzio.
Will be addressed to Mr. Rousseau. Mr. Rousseau, thank you so much for being here this afternoon, and more importantly, we note that you've improved on your French, and we salute you for that, and we encourage you to carry on as we want our head and directors, as many as possible, to be able to be fluently bilingual in the very near future. I'm interested, Mr. Rousseau, in the services that are being offered to Canadians. And so I know that there was a linguistic plan that was filed in prior to 2020 because it covers the years 2020 to 2023. And I was just wondering if you've considered updates ever since that plan has been filed. And if so, what are they? If you have not, what are you planning to improve, or what are you planning to add into your next plan as we move forward?
Mr. Chairman, in response to the question, so we did file a 2020 to 2023 very comprehensive plan built on 3 pillars: governance, service delivery, and people. However, in November, I tasked 2 of our executive vice presidents, one of which is the official language sponsor or champion for Air Canada, to speak to our employees about what else we could do. And just recently, we sent a note out to all employees indicating that we were going to put in 3 additional recommendations effective immediately. One, from a focus perspective, we wanted to create a new department called Official Language. We think this will provide more focus. This department will report to the executive committee of the company, myself and 5 executive vice presidents, on a regular basis as to the progress that's being made in improving our performance. Second, we've allocated more funds and more resources to more training. And third, we created an incentive program we created an award called Dialogue Award, which will be given to the person in the company that promotes bilingualism the best. And this will be on par with our service excellence and the highest awards we have at Air Canada. In addition to that, we are going to start paying our employees a special bonus if they refer a bilingual person, employee to Air Canada. So again, those three measures have just been put in place in the last week or two.
You'll be able to verify the benchmarks that will be set in your plan. What are your indicators, or how will you be able to verify that you've met those benchmarks of having both French and English, bilingual services given to Canadians?
Mr. Chairman, we certainly get feedback from customers, feedback from the Commissioner's office, and certainly the number of complaints dropping would be a key indicator to us going forward. We also do our own audits and tests. We have ambassadors, bilingual ambassadors at each of our major airports to reinforce
Sorry, Mr. Rousseau, I don't mean to cut you. I just want to know, how often do you do those verifications? And then I'm going to ask a quick question to your colleague, David Rowe.
Okay, well, I'll save you, Mr. Chairman, I'll save you some time, and I'll defer that question to David as well, because he would understand. He has a better understanding of the details on the frequency basis. David?
Oui, alors, on vérifie sur une base.
Yes, we audit regularly staff assigned and compliance to these requirements in the different services and flight services and the different airports throughout the country. Mr. Rowe, I'll give you the opportunity to speak more on the activities that you spoke about earlier in Quebec. With that regards to the efforts made, it might be bilingual, but we understand that certain activities are more focused. You were about to tell us in French a little bit more, and I'll give you the opportunity to complete your answer. 20 seconds. I just wanted to make sure we're clear. This is about our efforts with regards to compliance to the Official Languages Act? Yes. I know the question was asked earlier, but for lack of time, you didn't respond to the question. No, it was a question on the Quebec Charter. You'll have to come back to it. I'm sorry. Time is out. But the next question is for Mr. Beaulieu, 2 minutes and a half. On the one hand, earlier you said that you preferred the Official Languages Act, so we can see that there's a difference between the two, and you're confirming the Bloc's point of view that finds it unfortunate that C-13 makes the application of the Charter optional. And if you had to choose between the two, we understand that you'll choose the Official Languages Act. In 1976, the first Official Languages Commissioner wrote about Air Canada that after 7 years, 371 complaints were filed and 232 recommendations were made for improvements. It was the same thing with Graham Fraser and the following commissioners. The complaints from Francophone communities accumulated against Air Canada since 1969. How do you explain that, and why? Very quickly.
Complaints may be slightly higher in 2019 versus previous years because our traffic levels have more than doubled over that period of time. And the service that we provide on all the destinations we fly around the world has increased. And so it's just a matter of larger numbers of people that we're serving. We are one of the largest airlines in the world, and our traffic levels, our customers' levels.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président. Je pense.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that you're finding excuses because from the onset, Air Canada didn't meet these requirements. There seems to be a resistance. You don't recognize the problem, and it's not looking well for the future when you say one bilingual agent per plane. For 200 passengers, if you get the non-bilingual one, you might not get service. I don't think that's enough. I wanted to ask you if in Quebec you are aware that French isn't only an official language, it is the only official language and common language.
That French is the official language of Quebec. And Air Canada works very, very hard.
Désolé, Monsieur Rousseau.
Excuse me, Mr. Rousseau. 2 minutes and a half go by very quickly. Next question, once again, 2.5 minutes. Ms. Nikki Ashton. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that it's unfortunate that after 15 years in Montreal, you haven't learned to speak French, Mr. Rousseau. And even throughout this committee, the responses only in English are concerning. I also wanted to share our view that complying with the Official Languages Act is upon the federal government, and this is part of the modernization of the Act. We talked about the fact that Air Canada is targeted by this Act, but do you believe that the federal government should provide programs to support workers in this industry? And do you think that if the Commissioner could impose administrative monetary penalties against Air Canada, it should be able to do so against other companies in your industry as well?
Mr. Chairman, we're still reviewing the draft act, but there are certain areas that that we take note of. Certainly, the government's commitment to improve immigration and education is key to us. Our biggest challenge is finding enough bilingual people outside the province of Quebec to hire. We would love to hire more people, more bilingual employees. The supply, unfortunately, is just not sufficient. And so the government's commitment to both immigration and education is key to us performing better in the future. In regards to other airlines being subject to Official Languages Act, we think that is also a good idea. We only represent about 50% of customers flying within Canada. The other 50% of customers flying within Canada, of course, do not receive our level of service. We think all Canadians should receive the level of service that we provide. And
Rapidement, j'ai une autre question.
Very quickly, I have another question, and thank you for your answers. 5 seconds, Ms. Ashton, that's a little bit too short. Are you going to use bonuses to encourage your workers to learn French? Mr. Rousseau may be able to respond later. Our next question comes from a former member of the committee, Mr. Bernard Généreux. You have 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the witnesses for being here today. Mr. Rousseau, I seem to have understood that before your opening remarks or your speech in Montreal, the government of Quebec and Commissioner had advised you that it was ill-advised to speak only in English. And do you agree with that statement?
Mr. Chairman, ultimately, I made the decision to attend and speak at the event. My intentions were absolutely sincere. It's a very, very challenging time for Air Canada. I wanted to update the business community and our many partners in Montreal about our plans for the future. We are an integral part of the community in Montreal. We've been instrumental in making Montreal Airport one of the busiest airports in North America. I took the decision with very good intention, and I wanted to ensure that the audience at the event understood clearly what I needed to say. And at that point in time, my French was not strong, and so I chose to do the speech in English.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chairman, the Government of Canada is probably the worst student when it comes to complying with the Official Languages Act in each of its departments. there are continuous mistakes on websites. There are always things that don't work properly. And in C13, how do you explain that you want to implement penalties to federally regulated companies without themselves being regulated by this? It's as if the teacher wanted to the teacher wanted to speak out against its students without taking its own responsibilities.
We believe in a culture of continuous improvement and not penalties. We are heavily regulated industry with one of the primaries being safety. And so our focus would be more on continuous improvement. But if I can, I'd like to defer that question to David Rowe, who's much closer to to C13.
Merci, Monsieur Rousseau. Écoutez,
Thank you, Mr. Rousseau. Essentially, I'd like to come back to what our CEO said. We firmly believe that complying to the Act isn't based on penalties. It's an effort for a company that has such a high number of employees as Air Canada that's supported by this. And we work at very many different levels, and we don't believe that penalties for a private company like ours will improve the situation. We understand that the government could support companies that are committed to Canadian bilingualism. As Mr. Rousseau said, there are certain elements in the bill that go in that direction. Who is regulated in the transport industry via rail, but anything else? Airports and the airline authorities, AXA, the other airline companies don't have the same obligations, and that's why they can choose between the regime in Quebec and the new requirements set out in the bill. Air Canada doesn't have that choice. Air Canada is considered as a federal institution with regards to the Act, and that's the other element I wanted to add. That for our activities that are provincially regulated, Air Canada Vacation, for example, but at the federal level, we're the only company, and the commissioner did say that there were complaints against the transport industry towards Air Canada, but there can't be complaints against the other ones because they don't have the same obligations. Mr. Roy, I have another question. The pandemic was difficult for you, just like for other companies throughout Canada. And what impact did that have on bilingualism or bilingual staff? Because you probably had to lay off some of the staff, including bilingual people. And do you think that you can reintegrate all of the staff eventually if it hasn't been done so yet? 15 seconds. Yes, thank you for the question. All of the employees laid off were called back because we're rebuilding the company, and our strategy was to review their training, to provide courses that are more focused on this, to improve their language proficiency. Thank you, Mr. Hope. The next question is directly from Montreal. Mr. Angelo Iacono, you have 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Mr. Rousseau. I would like to know what the current situation is like at Air Canada in terms of regarding the proportion of Francophone and Anglophone employees.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. So currently, we have approximately 30,000 employees across the world, the majority of which are in Canada, and almost 10,000 of which are in Quebec, principally Montreal. We have approximately 40% which are fluently bilingual. These people have been tested.
Mr. Rousseau, excuse me. I would like to reformulate my question. If you don't have the answer, please come back to us with the figures, because, of course, you probably have your employee records, and because you provide bilingual services, each employees should have an identifier that states what languages they speak. In Quebec, I'd like to know, and the other provinces as well, what is the number of employees that speak French, that are francophone? Not only do they speak French, but who are considered as francophones. Those are two different elements. Somebody who can speak French isn't necessarily francophone. So my question is the following. For people who consider themselves in their employee record, in their application, they self-identify as francophones. Regardless of the initiatives and the 2020-23 linguistic plan, there are about 80 complaints a year against Air Canada. In other words, because of the lack of bilingual services or absence of services in French, how can Air Canada, or how is Air Canada planning to address these shortcomings with regards to official languages and to be more coherent when it comes to solving these problems in the short and long term?
In respect to the first part of the question, we will provide the exact numbers on francophones. I don't have them right now. We'll provide a breakdown whichever way you'd like it as soon as possible. To the second part of the question regarding what we're doing about it. Again, we have a very sophisticated, aggressive plan to train our employees in a second language, to hire as many bilingual personnel as we possibly can. And so we interact with francophone groups around the country to try and find that source of a bilingual employee. And so it starts there. It starts with hiring a bilingual employee. And to my earlier comments, that's why we're encouraged by the draft C-13, which speaks about enhancing immigration and education, because that would help us hire more bilingual employees. So a larger percentage of our staff would be bilingual. But I would say to the question that we do have a large number of bilingual staff within the company. 50% of our customer-facing employees are bilingual, which I feel is a fairly strong number. It could certainly get better with some of the suggestions I just mentioned.
Merci pour vos deux réponses. La prochaine, c'est...
Thank you for your response. My other question is the following. Could you give us detailed information on the number of employees that you have a year that register to the French language courses, French or English languages in your company or other language courses? Are these paid for by Air Canada?
Mr. Chairman, I'll defer that detailed question to David Rowe, but certainly from my perspective, I have no issue providing that level of information to the committee.
40 seconds.
20 seconds. Yes, courses are paid for by Air Canada. We can provide the details on that. We have our own staff language teachers that offer French lessons, but also other languages at various levels. So we have a full array of courses available. Thank you, Mr. Rowe. We're going into a third round of questions. Joël Godin, you have 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Rousseau, I would like to know if the Official Languages Commissioner warned you not to give your unilingual speech when you were in the Chamber of Commerce for Metropolitan Montreal.
Ultimately, I made the decision to attend and speak at that event and present the speech in English.
Monsieur le Président, je m'excuse de vous interrompre, j'ai 5 minutes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I have 5 minutes. I'm asking you a question. Did you discuss with the Official Languages Commissioner about the speech, who said that the speech should be in both official languages? Did the Commissioner warn you that when you are the CEO of a business like Air Canada, every speech you make publicly should be guided by the Official Languages Act, which means it should be bilingual?
Mr. Chairman, I did not speak to the commissioner myself, but I'll defer that question to David Rowe, who may have spoken to the commissioner.
Non, c'est pas nécessaire, Monsieur le Président.
No, that won't be necessary, Mr. Chair. I thank you, Mr. Rousseau. I'm going to ask you another question. Mrs. Latenzio asked you a question earlier about your linguistic plan 2020-2023. We saw that the complaints to the Languages Commissioner were an indicator. We were told that we look into the performance of our programs regularly, and this is the problem, is that we look into the question regularly. But I would like to know if there is rigor at Air Canada to make sure that French is respected. This is what makes us so concerned, Mr. Rousseau. Can you tell us if we have a program that is there to achieve results? Because earlier you said we're doing our best. You know, that's great. Lots of companies are doing their best. But instead of doing our best, we need to do things that will generate results. And this is what concerns us. We are all working together. And again, this is not against you personally, but we are trying to protect the French language. And this is what was started when you made that speech. So can you comfort us a little bit? Can you give us the tools that will confirm that you will promote French and prevent the decline of French?
Mr. Chairman, our interests are aligned. We take very seriously our responsibility to promote bilingualism and adhere to the Official Languages Act. I believe we have a very rigorous system to ensure that we continue to improve. And the enhancements are being made, as I just mentioned, over the last couple of weeks. This comes to the executive committee on a regular basis to review progress and potentially new initiatives. And so this is a very important area for the company. It's a very important area for me personally. And I do believe that promoting bilingualism is in the best interest of Canada and Air Canada, because this is part of our brand, this is part of our equity. And I take that very, very seriously.
Mr. Rousseau, I have no doubt as to your intentions and the intentions of your executive committee. In your Linguistic Action Plan 2020-2023, why is priority not given to hiring bilingual managers? The plan only focuses on customer-facing employees. Why isn't it not all employees, including upper management, including the CEO, that has a concern for French, the status of French?
Mr. Chairman, we do consider French to be a core asset when we promote, when we hire, no matter where it is in the company, customer-facing or otherwise. And although it may not be specifically in the plan, the 2020 to 2023 plan, it is an objective of Air Canada to hire as many people as possible who are bilingual. And again, on a more detailed level, I'd like to defer to David Rowe to provide some more color.
Merci, Monsieur Rousseau.
Thank you, Mr. Rousseau. Indeed, the plan speaks to the importance of hiring bilingual employees that are customer-facing, because that is our obligation to the public. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I have a quick question for Mr. Rousseau. I only have 30 seconds, not even. So in the Linguistic Action Plan, why is it not written in black and white that all employees should be considered bilingual and be hired on that ability? Mr. Godin, I would like to answer this question. I'm so sorry. The time has run out. Maybe you can elaborate, but please calm down. I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Kayabega for 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to thank our witnesses for being here today. Earlier, Mr. Rowe was asked a question by my colleague. So I would like to give you the time to answer the question. The question that was for me? The question that was posed by your colleague was about jurisdiction. And I think I had the opportunity to specify that Air Canada respects provincial laws in every provinces where it has activities. This includes the law on protecting French in Quebec. This is true for Air Canada Vacations that is subject to provincial law, and it has a French certificate that was emitted as part of the charter in Quebec. Thank you. Now I have a question for Mr. Rousseau. I know we talked about the speech you made on November 3rd. I'm curious about something. I would like to know what lessons you learned from this experience, especially given the reaction of Francophones in Quebec and outside of Quebec, but also the reaction from Anglophones in Quebec. What lessons have you learned? What would you have done or would you do better after this reaction?
Mr. Chairman, what I learned is to participate fully in Quebec society. I needed to learn French, and I should have started that earlier in my career at Air Canada. That was a mistake on my part. I'm correcting that at this point in time with relatively intensive lessons, and I hope to be able to converse as soon as possible in French with all Air Canada stakeholders, Francophone stakeholders, as soon as possible.
Merci.
Thank you. I really appreciate the efforts you're making to learn French, but beyond that, beyond French and the fact that you're taking French lessons, what else have you learned? What have you learned about our bilingual country that believes in protecting both official languages? And what about declining Francophone communities both within Quebec and outside of Quebec? I would like to understand what you understand from this experience. What do you understand of their experience? For example, I live in London, Ontario. I'm in a minority linguistic situation. So what have you learned and what would you do differently to help support French in Canada?
There's no doubt French is a minority language in North America, and it cannot be taken for granted. It needs a sustained effort to ensure that we preserve it. I believe a key strength of Canada is that it is bilingual, it has two official languages. I believe a key strength of Air Canada is that it does promote bilingualism. I certainly hope that my example of learning French can be an example for others living in Quebec and outside Quebec, that supporting both official languages is important for the entire country.
Si je peux me permettre de...
If I may, I would like to add something, Mr. Chair. I think you're right, Mrs. Kayabaga. When it comes to minority language communities, we all have the responsibility to help these people. At Air Canada, we've revised some programs to support organizations throughout Canada that are involved with bilingualism. We support events in every province. For example, Les Rendez-vous de la Francophonie were one of the sponsors since the very start. There's also the Festival Francescois, another one in Vancouver. I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to interrupt because I only have 10 seconds left. What I wanted to emphasize is that it's more than a language. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Kayabaga. Your time is already up. I try to interrupt you as smoothly as possible, but these are the rules. I can't help it. So for 2.5 minutes, Mario Beaulieu, you have the floor. Mr. Rousseau, you say that Air Canada respects the Official Languages Act, but Air Canada also has the most complaints at the Official Languages Commissioner. So do you find your response credible?
Our performance has been improving on a relative basis over the last several years. We know we can do more. We know we can do better. And my objective is to do that. We've recently put in some new enhancements. We are encouraged by what's in the draft C-13 regarding immigration and education. And so we do believe our performance will continue to improve.
Would you hire a unilingual anglophone in Quebec?
Répondez pas vite.
Your answer's not coming too fast. I can ask you a second question and you can record it. So you're saying that you try to have at least one bilingual staff on a plane. Has this always been the case in the past? If I may, the number of flight attendants on each plane depends on the size of the aircraft and of the route. Of course, for a flight from Montreal, there's more than one flight attendant that's bilingual on each flight because of the demand, of course. Okay, I don't have much time. So another question. I think it's really easy to say it's hard to find employees that speak French. Are you really making this a priority? Are there premiums for bilingual employees? I find it difficult to understand that you can't find enough bilingual employees, especially in Quebec. If I may, Mr. Beaulieu, at each stage of the hiring process, we look into which candidates are bilingual and available. And every candidate that is adequate and bilingual receives a job offer. You have 2.5 minutes for Mrs. Ashton. You have the floor. My question is what I was asking at the end of the last round about premiums. Will you use premiums to encourage workers, bilingual workers, if they're not available, as you say? If I may, Mrs. Ashton, we announced that we would have a special premium for every employee that refers bilingual candidates to us, specifically to increase the number of bilingual employees at Air Canada. Okay, well, it sounds like the picture you're painting is a dire one. So perhaps it's time to have measures that go further, direct bonuses. And also, another point that I'd like to raise is how concerned I am about Air Canada talking about how it's waiting for the implementation of the modernization of the Official Languages Act. This will take some time. We hope not too long. But we're hoping to welcome Francophone immigrants. But again, this will take time. So I think it's irresponsible to hear that Air Canada is waiting on that to hire Francophone employees. No, that's not what we said. With all due respect, Mrs. Ashton. With all due respect, it's something I've heard many times, and I'll thank you. It's my turn to speak. The initiatives of Air Canada that are paid for by Air Canada allow you to hire Francophone staff in Quebec and elsewhere. And let's talk about branding as well. An airline that's called Air Canada. Everyone knows that Canada is bilingual all over the world, and I think we should expect that they do better in their hiring and their provision of French services throughout Canada. We would like to see more ideas like direct premiums and training, language training that goes beyond 13 hours, as was mentioned by Mr. Gourde, because clearly Air Canada needs to do more and put more energy in these efforts. Thank you, Mrs. Ashton. This is all the time we had. Next question. 5 minutes. Mr. Gourde, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to come back on language lessons in Air Canada. Mr. Rousseau or your staff can answer. Is this a teacher that provides training one-on-one, or is this a group learning setting? That's an excellent question. We'd have to check. I think that there are various courses depending on the needs of an employee and the skills of an employee. But if you'd like more details on our language lessons offer, we can follow up in writing. That would be great. Thank you. Continue and I'll come back to you. So about your question on the number of hours compared to the number of employees. So we looked at the number of employees that took classes every year. It's possible that some employees take classes over many years. So sometimes the same employee shows up twice in the numbers. So when you're saying 130,000 hours, is that per year or over 4 or 5 years? Oh, since 2015, 130,000. So 20,000 hours per year for 10,000 employees. Let me finish my question, please, and then you can answer. When you talk about 130,000 hours of training, is 1 hour of training, is that 1 hour received for one employee, or is it 1 hour that was given by a teacher? Received by an employee. So you have a group of 20 employees with one teacher, it's calculated as 20 hours of training. For these details, I'll have to get back to you. I think it really depends on... So the 13 hours divided by 10 is 1.3 hours per employee divided by 10,000 employees. The way you're explaining it now makes it sound even worse than it was. So 130,000 hours over 7 years for 20,000 hours per year. And then if there's 10 employees per each class, you know, I could tell you that there's no training at Air Canada, and frankly, I am shocked. No, these are hours received by employees, and we'll come back to you with more details to explain these numbers. I'm so sorry for the confusion. No, this isn't confusion. It's even worse. An hour received, if there's one teacher and there's 20 people in the room, it means that 1 hour given is calculated as 20. It means that 130 hours can be divided by 10 or by 20 divided by 7 years. You know what? It's not a lot of hours per year. Anyways, this is a lottery. Getting language classes at Air Canada is a lottery. There really aren't any classes. That's enough for me. I can't. I'm done. I think I'm going to let my colleague take the floor.
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Godin, yes, you have 2 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, this is a very emotional subject, the matter of French language. And, you know, the French language is in decline. Mr. Rousseau, what I would like is to be comforted. I would like you to tell us what you're doing concretely starting today. This problem has existed for 45 years. 45 years that Air Canada has been flying in the wrong direction. So what would make us believe Air Canada now that would tell us that we're going to put an end to this and we're going to work on getting results? We want to stop the decline of French in Air Canada and change courses and guarantee a smooth flight. What can you tell us?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, the percent of employees at Air Canada that can speak both official languages has stayed the same or increased over the last several years. And so that is a reflection of our efforts to attempt to recruit and retain as many bilingual employees as possible. And I think that's a good thing from our perspective.
Monsieur le Président, je m'excuse.
Apologies. I have a quick question, and I have about 50 seconds left. You stated earlier, and I'll give you the time to respond, so you stated that things are going better. What are the indicators that you are using to state this?
One of our key indicators, Mr. Chairman, is the a number of complaints per customer or per number of customer interactions that we have. that ratio has been dropping. And I understand from the commissioner's perspective, he's looking at raw numbers. We look at relative numbers. And to
Merci, Monsieur Rousseau. Désolé.
Thank you, Mr. Rousseau. Sorry for interrupting you. The next question will be from Mr. Seri, who has 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Rousseau and the Air Canada staff for being here today. I would like to come back on what we were saying earlier, and you didn't get to answer Mr. Godin's question with regards to the measures that you will take. In the past 6 months, things have been difficult. You had a language plan for 2023, and you have measures to improve French in the company. You explained the increase of complaints in 2019, but what specific measures, and you weren't able to answer earlier, what specific measures are you taking now with your plan? And what are you doing to prepare for the next plan with regards to resources for services in French?
Right. Mr. Chairman, so let me first of all confirm that even during the darkest days of the pandemic, we still were committed and continue to be committed to training our employees in both official languages. That is one area, one resource where we never touched during the pandemic, given its importance to Air Canada and to Canada. From a Pacific perspective, again, we do have a rigorous 2020-2023 plan. As I mentioned earlier, just recently we introduced 3 new measures: more training hours, a separate department for official languages that reports directly to the executive committee, and a series of incentives to try and recruit more bilingual employees. Those are 3 Pacific measures that have just been introduced in addition to the other measures that were introduced, like ambassadors at the different airports, like a management committee that oversees the progress we're making on the Official Languages Act. So a series of different initiatives that have been put in place over the last several years to improve our performance.
Mr. Rousseau, earlier you mentioned that you hired or tried to rehire employees that had to be laid off. And now we're talking about a shortage of employees throughout the country, and it's difficult to recruit new employees. Do you have any strategies that you can share with us? And how could the federal government help you recruit from other countries? Are there countries that you discussed this possibility with? Could the government help you recruit more francophones for your company?
Mr. Chairman, certainly, we would love to have a discussion with the relevant departments in the government about recruiting from countries. We have that dialogue already, and that's, I think those are progressing. Those discussions are progressing. To your first point, we did bring back the majority of our staff. We're lucky that the majority of our staff came back to us after being off for some period of time. And so from our perspective, we did not lose any, maybe none, of our bilingual employees, which I think is a testament to the Air Canada focus on bilingualism. But to your point about a difficult labor market, totally agree. It is a difficult labor market, and certainly we would look to speak to the Canadian government about opportunities to bring in additional bilingual people, and we would provide them certainly a job offer as a condition.
20 secondes.
20 seconds. Mr. Serré, do you have anything else? No?
Newcomer, welcome to our committee. Mr. Taco Van Popta, 5 minutes for you, my friend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Russo, for being here, spending time with us to discuss this very important topic. Mr. Russo, I identified with your opening comment that your skills in the French language do not yet meet the effort that you put into it. So I identified with that because as a unilingual member of Parliament from Canada's West Coast, I too feel that I need to learn French. And I've been taking French lessons, and I know how difficult it is. It's a big challenge, so congratulations. Keep going. Now, Mr. Rousseau, the news of your unfortunate statement to the Montreal Chamber of Commerce last year made news even in British Columbia, where I'm from. Very unilingual British Columbia, I might add. And it was news because people in BC are quite proud of being in a Canada that is bilingual and bicultural. And I would say that is measured by how important, how popular French immersion is in schools. There's just not enough chairs, not enough seats, not enough spaces available. And so if there's one thing that maybe comes out of this in your comments today, that there should be more emphasis put on French immersion, particularly when you're saying you can't even find enough employees who are bilingual. So that's perhaps a challenge for all of Canada. But, sir, you're saying that the bilingualism of Air Canada is important to you and to your company, but doesn't the inspiration for fulfilling a company's mandate and building on a strategic plan, doesn't that start from the top? And how does your inability to speak fluent French impede your ability to inspire your employees?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think it does impede my ability to inspire our employees. Certainly by taking lessons, I hope, again, as I mentioned earlier, to show an example to all employees. What's important is my commitment, my focus on this very, very important issue. The discussions we have at the executive committee on it, what progress is being made, and that is our employees understand that I'm committed to this. Our executive committee is committed to this. Our board of directors is committed to this, and I think that's what's very, very important to inspire our employees.
Airline company in Canada that is subject to the Official Languages Act. Do you see that as a competitive advantage or disadvantage? What are some of the challenges around that?
Mr. Chairman, in response to the question, we see it as a competitive advantage. As I mentioned earlier, it is ingrained in our brand and our mission and our equity. And the better we do at this, I'm convinced the better we do as a company. And that's why there's a strong focus on this area.
Okay, thank you. I didn't hear the last part of that answer, but now, as I said, I'm from British Columbia. I've spent some time in Quebec and Montreal, but I don't understand the culture like obviously a resident would. But now you did apologize to Quebecers and Francophones. People, does that include English-speaking Quebecers as well? Could you explain some of the dynamics around that?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I apologize to anyone that was assaulted, hurt by the comments made on November 3rd. And whether that's Francophones across Canada or Anglophones within or without outside Quebec. As to the Anglophone community in Montreal, I really don't have a perspective at this point in time. My focus right now is learning to speak French and certainly returning Air Canada back to where it was in 2019. And that's what I'm focused on.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Popta.
Thank you very much. I have a few questions, actually. And Mr. Drouin is giving me the time to ask them. My first question, Mr. Rousseau. For Mr. Godin's question, you said at the airport or on the plane or at the desk, if somebody can't speak French, they say, un moment, s'il vous plaît, one moment, please. Do you believe that that is a service in French that respects the Official Language Act? Or are you measuring your compliance with the time that it takes for a bilingual employee to offer service, which can take 15 or 30 minutes or perhaps may not happen at all? How do you measure your compliance with offering equal services in both languages?
Well, Mr. Chairman, first of all, it would not take 10 or 15 minutes to find a bilingual employee. And as I said earlier, if we can't find a bilingual employee to respond to the customer in the language of their choice, then we can call a special number at the call center where a Francophone employee would respond to the customer. So all that would be done within minutes, frankly, not 10 or 15 minutes. We know typically customers are in a hurry, and so we've put in this two-layered approach to ensure that we satisfy the customer in the language of their choice.
Que vous considérez, Monsieur le Président,
So, for the client to wait 5 minutes, and for me, it's happened that it took longer than that. Eventually, the person may just take the time and just speak English instead of waiting for somebody to speak French. Can we do something different about that?
Mr. Chairman, I don't disagree that once in a while that employee may respond in English, and that is not our policy. That's not how employees have been trained. We will continue to think about ways to better deliver that service. We believe the way we have now is fairly efficient.
Merci. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. And another question. I have two short questions. Will we be having other questions? Yes. Okay. Of course, Monsieur Beaulier. So, earlier, in 2016, your predecessor said the same thing as you did, that there was difficulty recruiting people who are bilingual. What has changed? This was being said by your predecessor in 2016 that we received here at the committee. What has changed in Air Canada's recruitment process from 2016 to now in order to try to find bilingual employees? What changed in Air Canada's strategy? If I may answer, we've been working with groups who work in the communities in order to recruit bilingual staff. We have ads in Francophone newspapers as well. But Mr. Rio, and I apologize for interrupting you, are you perhaps offering bonuses? Could you offer a bilingual bonus? Answer: we are noting your suggestions. As we stated, we will be offering a bonus to people who help us recruit bilingual employees, but we will examine your suggestion to see how we can improve our recruitment process. And I have a quick last question. Earlier, I think it was the second question that my colleague asked you. You stated that you offer bilingual services in higher volume flights. How do you determine which flights require service in French? Answer: that is a good question. 5% of there needs to be 5% of the demand for it to be seen as significant, and we believe that that method should be applied to the obligations of other transporters. We're talking about Air Canada today, so who determines that 5%? You have 20 seconds. we calculate according to passengers with the language that they use when checking in. Thank you. Next question, 2.5 minutes, Mario Beaulieu. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So if after 6 months of intensive learning in French, Mr. Rousseau can't respond to questions in French, that's not very reassuring. I will re-ask my question. Would Air Canada hire a unilingual Anglophone in Quebec?
Mr. Chairman, we hire based on merit. But again, as I said earlier, we focus on hiring bilingual employees. And as David talked about, we've been relatively successful in doing that, although not as successful as we'd like.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. So your answer is yes, basically. So about half of Francophones in Quebec don't speak English. Would you hire a unilingual Francophone? Perhaps I can answer your question, Mr. Beaulieu. When I started working at Air Canada, I couldn't speak English very well. So we hired you, even though you didn't really speak English, but you didn't answer.
We would hire a Francophone and as well. We hire based on merit with a view of trying to hire as many bilingual employees as possible.
Parfait. Dernière question. Bon, au sein.
Last question. At Air Canada, I think it's the VP for Human Resources, Ariel, who is responsible for compliance to the Official Languages Act. Why is she not here today to respond to questions? You have 20 seconds.
Mr. Chairman, David Rowe reports to Ariel, and so we chose to have David here. Ariel certainly could have been here and address these questions. But we chose David, given his deeper understanding.
Merci, Monsieur Rousseau. Prochaine question.
Thank you, Mr. Rousseau. Next question from Nikki Ashton for 2.5 minutes. My first question, Mr. Rousseau talked about learning hours. How many hours have you spent approximately learning French so far?
Mr. Chairman, in the 4 months that I've been taking lessons, it's mid-November to today, it's approximately 10 hours a week of lessons and homework.
Okay.
Another question. A language management committee needed to be created for your action plan. You stated that. And has the committee started its work? And if yes, what are the results so far?
Pourrais répondre à cette question-là.
Perhaps I can respond. The committee started its work even during the pandemic and meets every quarter. And one of its objectives was to develop centralized communication throughout the different departments and operations to remind the importance of our obligations and official language procedures. And finally, I'd like to come back to Mr. Rousseau's comment. Do you not think that communicating with your clients in their own language, French, isn't part of the necessary talents to be hired?
I apologize. The question broke up, and so I didn't fully hear the question.
Recommencez, Madame Ashton.
You can repeat the question, Ms. Ashton. You said earlier at the committee that we hire based on merit. do you not think that the ability to communicate with clients in their own language, in French, is that not an essential talent for hiring?
I think I said that. I said we hire on merit with a focus on hiring bilingual employees so they can speak in both official languages to all our clients.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Ashton.
Thank you, Ms. Ashton. Mr. Rousseau, next question. For 5 minutes, the first VP of the committee, Mr. Godin. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rousseau, you said that your review had been improving, and I wanted to know what indicators this is based on. And did you use the figures of the Official Languages Commissioner or your own? Can you tell me exactly what indicators you use? And by the way, I'd like to say that you shouldn't look at 2020, 2021, because of course Air Canada wasn't very active during those years with less travel. And it's normal that there were less complaints at the OLC. What indicators are you basing your responses on?
Mr. Chairman, that's absolutely correct. We don't, although we monitor 2020 and 2021, we're not using it as an indicator. So we have to go back to 2019, where we had over almost 52 million customers travel on our planes throughout the year. And again, on a relative basis, on a rate basis, the number of complaints declined year over year, given the growth in customers.
Peut-être juste, si je peux me permettre.
If I may, of course, we were very hardly hit by the pandemic, but we did carry between 13, excuse me to interrupt you, Mr. Ho. I appreciate that you're here with us, but my question was for Mr. Rousseau. He stated that the company had indicators according to which the situation had improved. Can you tell me about these indicators? Don't tell me that the volume decreased. I understand that. But Mr. Rousseau, I want to know what specific indicators are you basing the statement on? Because you said that you were using some figures, the Commissioner others, but could you specify this? Because your answer isn't very clear once again.
Mr. Chairman, again, I'll reinforce my answer that one of the key indicators is the rate of complaints to the number of customers that we serve and the interactions we have with those customers. And that is one of the key measures that we would ascribe our performance to.
Ce qui veut dire, Monsieur Rousseau.
Mr. Rousseau, this means that in 2022, when we will get this review, because if we look at the Official Languages Commissioner results, if there is an in Greek, can you firmly commit in front of this committee that you will implement measures to improve the use of French at Air Canada?
And that's always been our objective, and we will certainly continue, as David talked about, to look at new measures to improve our performance as well.
Monsieur le Président, je comprends.
Mr. Chairman, I understand that this is your objectives and your predecessors as well, but this doesn't work. Can you find new ideas? Can you implement new mechanisms to achieve results? What we want to do is protect French.
Chairman, and I agree with the member's question, and we have the same objective, and so we will find different measures, if required, to improve our performance, and that's what continuous improvement is. We have committees internally that look at this. Again, Ariel and Lucy, our two executive vice presidents, just spoke to many of our staff to solicit their input as well. And so we continue to find ways to improve our performance, and that will never stop.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, I know that you have the best intentions, but I can affirm that the previous methods don't work. And I'm not very comfortable with your statements, Mr. Rousseau, because Some answers were very evasive earlier. We talked about hours of work and then over a year, 7 years, an hour per person, an hour per teacher. It wasn't very convincing, if I may. We want to be reassured. Are you fully committing here? Let's stop exploring possibilities, analyzing, consulting committees. Could you be concrete and implement what is necessary to find a solution? I don't have that solution, Mr. Rousseau, but I simply want to make sure that the executives take the necessary measures to achieve short-term results. Can you commit firmly here today? Thank you, Mr. Godin. Last question for today's session. Ms. Patricia Latanzio, you have 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Rousseau, to conclude, can you tell us more about roles and responsibilities that are specific at Air Canada when it comes to maintaining official languages? Can you tell us about Air Canada's unique roles and responsibilities?
Heard Mr. Rousseau, or I see you hesitating. I can wait.
Mr. Chairman, just to confirm, the question was what roles and responsibilities are integral to Air Canada in respect to the Official Languages Act?
What, if I may, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Rousseau, it's more like just to hear you on, to speak to us about the roles and responsibilities that are unique to Air Canada in the maintenance of the official languages of Canada.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. So, as mentioned earlier, one of our executive vice presidents, Ariel Malou, is the official languages champion for Air Canada. She oversees the department headed by David Rowe and training as well. As David mentioned earlier, we have a dedicated set of trainers in obviously in French and other languages as well, but primarily French. And as I mentioned earlier, the progress that we're making or the ideas that we're generating come to the executive committee, which is myself and our 5 executive vice presidents, all of which are bilingual.
If you may, Mr. Rousseau, could you submit to us a written response? Can you give us this answer in writing? We all understood the question, and this would give us this possibility to get the answer in writing. I'd like to come back to Mr. Rowe. You talked about regulations, and in response to my colleague, Mr. Arsenault's question, you talked about 5% when there's a flight with a minimum of 5% of bilingual services. Would it be possible to give us a copy of this regulation so that we can understand this more clearly? Yes, it's a government regulation that we apply. Yes, we can send you this reference without any problem. And do you think that this regulation should be enhanced? Well, we believe that in the bill tabled, the government stated its intention to subject other companies to servicing clients in French, and we think that the same thing should apply to them. You're talking about flights, but if there's a change of flight, what do you do in that case? Well, we measure the demand on that new flight. It's an exercise. It's a good question because it's a dynamic. Air Canada isn't in an office in a Canadian region, but we are ubiquitous because of the nature of our operations. And some flights are automatically designated by the Act. Flights leaving from Montreal, for example, or within Quebec, New Brunswick, or Ontario, or between those 3 provinces, or any flight that is leaving from Moncton and Ottawa off the top of my head. We can send you a list of those automatically designated flights, the method, how we calculate high in-demand services for in-flight services and airports. It would be an interesting suggestion for the committee to implement these obligations to define Francophone regions that will be applicable to other carriers. And to conclude, Mr. Ho, we're coming to a close. 2022 is coming to. We're getting closer to 2023. What improvements do you see? What changes could you add to this plan that is expiring in 2023? It's a good question. We will review our efforts and look at results in terms of recruiting, training, and we'll consult our employees to define our next objectives. Of course, Air Canada is in recovery right now, and it's an opportunity to review our processes, and we're fully committed in improving our services. Thank you, Ms. Latancio. Mr. Rousseau, thank you for being here today. You said that you would send us certain documents. If you believe that any other information would be relevant, could you send it to us in writing? Any document that you can send us will be evidence as well, even if it's after this session. So please feel free to send us that information. Thank you to our colleagues for this great session. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Rousseau, and Mr. Ho, and Mr. Barbeau. Thank you.